Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda, and today's special guest is Fernanda, a psychologist originally from Brazil, now living in Sydney and practicing psychology there. So thank you so much for coming on today, Fernanda.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Thank you. So maybe you can start off by sharing a little bit about yourself, where you're from, like which part of Brazil, how long you've been in Australia, and any other modalities you practice besides psychology.
Okay. All right. So I am from a very small town in the countryside of Sao Paulo. I left when I was 17 to study psychology. So I went to a different city. And when I graduated, I moved to Australia. So I have been here since 2002, a long time.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
very long
22
time.
years. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Cool.
in this Australian journey, I was very young when I moved here and I wasn't really ready to be a psychologist. And this is something that I have realized in my life that it takes time and you need life experience in order to actually help people. So I was too young. So I really found the passion for teaching and I started teaching international students as well. So I am also an English teacher. And I worked with children. I did a little bit of everything. But today, what I do is I work as a counselor for Kaplan Business School as a student counselor and also a private practice. But I also love teaching. So I do workshops and every opportunity I have, I like to teach.
Amazing. How great is that? I love that. I forgot to mention this before, actually, but I've got quite a few Brazilian students, and a lot of my followers are from Brazil. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of
Okay, there
people
you go.
interested in today's episode.
Great. There's a lot of
All
Brazilians
right.
here.
Yes. Yes. I heard there's a huge community in Sydney. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first arrived, I remember there were it was a big community, but it was very specifically like to Bondi, where I am still based, close to Bondi.
Yeah.
But nowadays, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge community, which is great.
Yeah, good. When you went to Australia, were you studying there? Did you go as an international student?
I did. I sure did.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I first came with my boyfriend at the time, and then he became my husband. We came together just to study, practice English. So I was a student for a couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. So how did being an international student shape your work in mental health support in Australia today?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think that was really the foundation of my work that I do today. Because even though I had left home at a young age, I was 17, to go to uni, it's still different. I was still close by, I would say an hour away, same language. It was challenging for me. It's not an easy step to get out of home, but moving away and so far away to a different country, different language, different culture. I really understood the impact of, and that time, mind you, back in 2002, there was no internet. It wasn't that accessible.
True.
I didn't have Facebook, FaceTime. I would speak to my parents once a week over the phone. We had to buy those pay cards. Do you know those cards?
Yes, the pay cards, exactly. And go to a public telephone or something.
Yeah,
or a calling card, I think they call it.
The public telephone, or, I didn't see them. I actually still have the letters that I used to exchange with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it was hard not, being so far away from them and the lack of support. I was very lucky I had my boyfriend, but I had friends who were struggling. So that really experiencing firsthand what it is to be away from home, even though I see most students, they have a purpose and the purpose is really strong.
Yeah.
But the lack of support and the cultural barriers and the language can really impact your life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I moved to India to get married. My husband is Indian. So I mean, I had that support when I moved here, but about 9 months after I moved, the pandemic started.
Oh,
So yeah, I didn't really have a chance. I think I only made like one friend prior to the pandemic, or two friends. And it was incredibly lonely and isolating not having that kind of support system, and going from a job in Australia that was very social. Like I used to love going to the office. I refused to work from home because it was so
uh-huh.
social for me. And then to go from that to basically nothing, and then feeling like I didn't have a purpose, it really affected me mentally. I mean, during that time, I also got diagnosed with a mental health disorder. So that also didn't help. But, I think I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday, is that during that COVID period when I wasn't allowed to work, I didn't have a big support network. I started this journey on self growth before I was diagnosed. And what I'm doing now is a byproduct of that self growth from all those years ago, because I started teaching as a way to connect with people again. Like I was craving, even through a screen, this kind of virtual interactions. And then that kind of started my teaching process.
That's amazing, isn't it? What life brings us.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, that's
If
so
you're
interesting.
open
Thank you
to
for sharing.
receiving, it's beautiful.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Very important note to think about. Yeah.
I think so. And thank you for sharing that as well. And you
Thank
said about
you.
the pandemic, and I think the pandemic was a huge catalyst for me as well, because prior
Yeah.
to the pandemic, I was working as a teacher.
Okay.
And, because of my background and because I have been an international student, I felt like the students, they kind of gravitated towards me, and they're
Yeah.
always, it was my personality as well. I'm very open
Mm.
and I'm warm, and I'm very interested in their lives, but I'm genuinely
Yeah.
interested. I'm not just
Yeah.
faking. So
Yeah.
I think they could feel it. So they were
Yeah.
always talking to me after class and, asking for
Mm.
advice. And I was always
Yeah.
very happy to give advice. And then the pandemic hit, and then I could see, wow, there is a huge gap in this
Yeah.
industry, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very common to have psychologists and counselors at universities. You see that it's a
Yeah.
common practice. But
Mhm.
for international English schools and vet colleges, at least
Mm.
in Australia, it wasn't a common practice, and the
Wow.
need
Okay.
was huge. Yes, no, it wasn't
Yeah.
something that you'd see.
I didn't
Um,
realize that.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
and I started a program, and
Yeah.
just starting, I said, I think we should just start it just as a reaction to the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
And it grew and it kind of exploded. And now you see
Yeah.
most colleges now, they have someone to
That's
help with the
great.
mental health of our students. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Amanda, it was really sad because we did lose a student for suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is more common than we think
Yeah. Yeah.
amongst
I imagine it
international.
would be. Kaplan, who you work for now, is that who you worked for when you were teaching as well?
No,
Did you shift from teaching?
I
Okay. All
shifted.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did shift it. So that work, it was a pandemic, was a bit hybrid, and I was still teaching and being a
Yeah.
counselor, and then building my own
Yeah.
practice
Wow.
as well. And
Yeah.
then Kaplan, they had this program already established, and it was a
Yeah.
good professional development for me.
Okay.
So
Great.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy to work for
Yeah.
Kaplan. It's such a great
Yeah.
organization, and mental health is a priority for them.
Amazing. That's so good. I think what you said is you've hit the nail on the head, is that I don't think it was really seen as a priority before, especially for international students. And I think it's really one of those things that you don't know until, like, as an international student, you wouldn't know how you're going to react to this situation until you actually do it. You can read all the books, you can scan all the websites, you can watch all the videos, but you don't know how you individually are going to react until you are there. And I
Exactly.
think to have that kind of mental health support and have those options available is so, so, so important, especially during COVID when they weren't even allowed to go to school, and then all of their social interactions would have just been cut.
100%. Totally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Wow.
COVID, it just really shone a light on mental health. And it's something like it was always there. Because someone says
Yeah.
that, some people think, oh, but it wasn't as prevalent. It has always been prevalent.
Yeah. It's
It's
just
always
now a
been.
bit light is being shone on it.
Absolutely. And now we actually name it and we acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
great
True.
for the break of stigma, because we still need to deal with
Yes.
stigma.
Yeah, I was
mental
actually just going to say that actually. Living in a country like India where there's a huge stigma around mental health, where I'll just do a bit of yoga and some meditation and you'll be fine. Like everyone feels overwhelmed or anxious. What are you talking about? Kind of mindset. It's changing, but I can definitely see a big difference between, say, Australia, the stigma in Australia compared to India. But I haven't been in Australia for 5 years now. So I'd love to maybe get your input about what the stigma around mental health is like in Australia now.
Yeah. Look, I think it's changing and it's improving. It's getting better and better. I definitely think that Australia, like most Western cultures, like countries, are more open to that dialogue.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And we see, Eastern cultures like India or the subcontinent countries, there is, I think, a greater stigma, but also I think we need to be aware. And that's what I think I am doing now, working at Kaplan, is I'm dealing with so many students from these countries and I'm learning so much from them. And that the way that we in the Western world, in the Western society, we see mental health is from a very individualistic perspective.
Yeah,
right?
true.
So it's the notion of self, is very medical. It's really focused on diagnosis and labels, which is okay. And it's evidence-based and it's, medication and the self. Whereas the Eastern cultures is focused on the community, isn't it? So is
true.
all this beautiful wealth of and this knowledge of our elders and ancestors and the family and the community itself. So we can't deny that it also plays a very important role. It's just different.
Yeah. True. Yeah, that's very true, actually. And I think, I'm just completely assuming here, but I think that's something that'd probably be a bit tricky for yourself as a counselor, is that you'd have to really try and understand the individual's culture, like of your client or your patient. You can't just kind of have like a blanket assumption for everyone. You really have to understand if you have, for example, there might be someone from Japan or someone from India or someone from China. You'd have to understand the individual cultures of all of those different countries.
Absolutely. And I have to work with their framework and I have to work with their mindset and not, you can't assume things and you kind of have to go in a neutral space.
Yeah.
Really sit with them and understand what is the framework that they are sitting in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely does. And that's something that I really appreciate in my therapist here, because I was a bit worried when I was looking for a therapist here in India, because I'm thinking I don't want someone that's going to give me, I guess, Indian viewpoints does help, but I need someone who's going to understand my point of view and my cultural perspectives and come from being able to look objectively from my point of view. And that's what I really appreciate about my therapist, is that she does that really well. So she knows how to explain things from an Indian standpoint because she's Indian, but at the same time, she can say to me, she validates my feelings and can say, I can see where you're coming from. Or she might even say that this is a cultural barrier or a cultural difference. Because there's times where I think that maybe I'm the problem. Maybe it's me, but it's just a cultural difference that I wasn't aware of.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have students, for example, I had a student that family value for her and the parents' opinion, and not just immediate family, but like cousins and aunties. And it's so important and it's so embedded in her idea of self. And it was really hard for her to assert herself. And coming from me, from, a Brazilian girl living in Australia, I'm like, just live your life. Who cares? They don't pay your bills anymore.
Yeah.
But that wasn't helpful. So I can't do that. So I had to really try to understand the situation she was in from her point of view, understanding her background, and help her within that background to what was the best solution for her at that moment. Not completely, because that's her reality.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So we got to really be sensitive to that.
Yeah. I actually just read a book last week. I think you would really enjoy it. I always forget the name of it, but it basically talks about the difference between hot and cold climate cultures and how technically people from a hot climate culture, they are more kind of indirect with their communication. They're more family orientated. Their communication styles are very different. Whereas someone from a cold culture climate like Australia, direct communication, punctuality, and being on time is important. They value time, whereas hot culture climates, they don't really care about timing, things like that. It was very interesting. Only about 60 pages. I'll send it to you after.
I'd love to read that. Thank you.
Yeah. I just thought it'd be very interesting because even though Australia is technically a hot country, it kind of falls under the values of cold climate culture because of the European influence. But then the Indigenous Australians, their kind of way of living is more aligned with the hot culture customs.
Yes, I would say that.
Yeah, just because of the lack of the European influence, so to speak. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Yeah. So on the topic of stigma, what are some effective ways to reduce stigma around mental health for international students? Like if you have a student from, let's say, India, where stigma is very high around mental health, then they come to Australia. So what are some ways to reduce that?
Yeah. Well, that is my biggest challenge that I am trying to overcome. So when I first started working as a counselor at Kaplan, like we have a huge Indian cohort of students. And I was like noticing that they were not engaging as much as I wanted them to, right? Whereas the South Americans, the European countries, the Filipino, they would just flood my office. I had them all the time. And then the Indians, the Sri Lankans. So I think it is time, but we all think we need to change what I'm trying to do myself, change my perspective, and to change my approach. So rather than wanting them to see mental from a Western perspective, I wanted to see mental health from the Eastern perspective. So what I'm doing is, so I'm not hoping that they will come and see me because maybe they don't understand this idea of self. For them, if they're sick or if they're feeling anxious, or they will talk to a friend, or they will talk to a family member, or they will speak to like a guru or, a religious person. So I'm working within the KBS community. We're working with ambassadors, people from their own community that are speaking up and being trained.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
So that's kind of, I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to understand what is important. And then I can train these key students in what I think will be important for them living in Australia to learn what the skills. And these people are disseminating these ideas.
Amazing. What a great idea.
It's still like in an initial project, but we've had a couple of meetings. We had some workshops on the differences between Western and Eastern mental health. It's been really good. The response has been incredible.
But that's amazing.
Talking about it, I demystify this idea that, if you have anxiety or if you suffer from a mental health disorder, you're crazy, right? And I always share with my students, I say, look, I've always had anxiety. I take antidepressants. I've been taking antidepressants for a long time to help me cope with my anxiety. And they go, oh, really? And I say, it's okay. I'm not
Yeah.
crazy. No, you're not crazy. Just
Yeah.
having that conversation. And education, I think education is so important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
offering workshops and discussions, every opportunity I
Mhm.
have to talk to them. But I think really having this conversation both
Mhm.
ways, right?
Yeah.
So what's important
Mhm.
for them, what's mental health for them, what's important for me, and then learning from them as well. Because I believe,
Yeah.
Amanda, I really believe that every person, every single human on this planet has inside of them the healing power.
Yeah.
So it's not me. So
Yeah.
if they want to come to me, I can guide them, but they have
Yeah.
the ability to heal themselves. It's just
Yeah.
finding a
Yeah.
way. So for some people might be
True.
talking to a counselor, for other person might
Yeah.
be doing yoga, doing meditation, might be,
Yeah.
spending time with a loved one. It doesn't matter what works for you. You
Yeah.
just have to find what works for you.
Yeah. So it's almost like a very holistic approach, isn't it? Trying to find out exactly what it is that it's going to work, because what works for one person might not work for the next person. So it's just
Absolutely.
trying to figure it all out. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love that kind of
It's not a
approach.
cookie cutter approach. Really, it
Yes.
isn't.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned from the Eastern approaches, because I love yoga, I love Ayurveda,
Yeah.
I study Ayurveda, I love Buddhism.
Yeah.
So this is what I
Yeah.
learned. Like, we can't separate mind and body and
Mm.
spirit. It's
Yeah.
holistic,
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible.
right?
Like, what a great idea to be able to, I guess, if you notice that maybe it's not something that you're able to do to kind of connect with people from these countries, but to train people from their own communities, because they're probably more
Yeah,
likely to listen and understand if they see someone who looks like them, sounds like them from the same country talking
exactly.
about it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
about when you were younger, so like when you're a teenager, I don't know you, but when I was 16, I was a bit, I had some troubles, and my mom sent me to a psychologist. I didn't
Mm.
want to talk to her because she was older than me. I think
Yeah.
if I was someone my age or a little older
Yeah.
than me, I would be
Yeah.
more inclined to open up.
Yeah.
Right? The
Yeah.
same thing with
Definitely.
our students. If they are surrounded by people from their own country, and I always encourage them, it's okay. I know we have a English only policy. When it's well-being, speak your own language. We need
Yeah.
to
Great.
connect. And
Yeah.
it's very hard to open up and to speak in English when you're trying to find the words in your own language,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking of
right?
myself. If I was to ever try and like put into Hindi how I'm feeling, I know very minimal adjectives to describe how I'm feeling in Hindi to try and explain it. Oh my goodness. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's very hard, you know. So I really encourage them to speak their own language. And I think that is
Yeah.
very good. So you can actually feel that warmth, the comfort
Yeah.
of your own language.
Yeah. Yes, that's actually such a good point, because, and I'm really glad that the school is on board with that kind of
Yeah.
communication, because there's, I guess, maybe in one language it might lack warmth, but then if it's in their own language, they can understand things a little bit easier. There's no miscommunications, there's no like translating issues, that sort of
Yeah,
thing. So
exactly.
yeah, I think that's a really important thing to consider.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So what would, in your opinion, what are some of the most common mental health challenges that international students face in Australia?
I would think that they would face the same mental health conditions that we all face, right?
Yeah.
Which normally, like nowadays, is very common to see anxiety, a bit of depression.
Mm-hmm.
That's the world we're living in. But for international students, I think it's sad because they have to deal with the common mental health disorders. And then we
Mm.
add another layer on top of isolation, cultural difference, language barrier. academic pressure, financial pressure. So it's a lot. It becomes like a pressure cooker because they have to deal with the mundane, anxiety, depression, relationship issues, things that we all deal with. But then they are on top of that, away from home, speaking a different language, having to travel to study. And it's in Australia, I don't know if you're aware of it, but since July, the visa requirements has completely changed. And it's, so that the students are really struggling now.
I bet. Yeah.
But a lot of
And the government didn't give much warning, did they? It was kind of just like, this is happening 1st of July, and it was like, what, 1 month prior or something?
It's been very disheartening to see people who have planned that they planned their path, the study path, the study journey, and then they had to change everything, or some of them just had to go back home.
I've had a couple of students say that they're considering maybe going back home earlier than planned, or maybe just going back if they hadn't have planned, because there's just, their options have changed now.
They don't have like a way to stay. If they had a plan, now they don't anymore, because the was a limit, I think 30 or 35 years old to get specific visa. Now they put that cap to, I don't know, 30. They just made things more difficult.
That's so tough. I can't even imagine having to deal with, like you said, the mundane, or like the the everyday kind of stresses, and then to have everything else kind of put on top. It would make it really tough.
It is tough, and that's why I think it's so important. My work is not only, and to be honest with you, I do work with students, but I think the bulk of my work is to actually educate everybody else to understand and to be sensitive and empathetic, because if you are not an international student, if you haven't been in that position, it's very easy for you to just be very black and white. This is the rule, as a teacher as well. Oh, you're late. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to mark you absent. Being very strict. But you got to understand what goes on in their lives. And you got to be empathetic. So that's kind of, I do a lot of workshops and education, for teachers and lecturers and staff that work directly with international students, so they can actually understand and empathize.
So how do you make sure that your programs are culturally sensitive and inclusive for students?
So I think this is a learning curve for me. When I started teaching, I was basically teaching South American students and European students, which was closer to my upbringing, so I could relate more. But then I started to learn more about the Asian cultures, the Indian cultures, and really understand and be curious. As I said, I'm actually interested and I want to learn. And that is something that I share, and I make sure that the teachers also learn. And another approach that I use, and I think it's really important for teachers, and not only teachers, but like academics and the student services, is to take what we call a trauma-informed approach. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah, I have. Yeah, great.
So we just have to understand that no matter where you're from, no matter your background, we all have been exposed to trauma. So we just have to be kind and understanding, right? So remember, there's a human in front of you that has feelings just like you, that has emotions. So just be aware of that. Always remember that. So, and I always say to teachers, if someone is showing class and they're shy, they don't want to participate, or they don't just assume, oh, he is that or that. So don't. So assumptions is not welcome here. We just need to understand. We need to have that conversation and understand, maybe that student was, maybe like ashamed in front of a class when he was a child. It's very common, they have panic. They don't want to present. They don't like to speak in public. And if we force them to do that, we're actually causing harm. Like we might have like, oh, this is for their benefit because they need to practice
Yeah.
public speaking. Right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. So it's
Not
just kind of
helping.
just being a nice person and recognizing that, I guess, yeah, like you said, assumptions aren't welcome because you really don't know what someone's going through or what they have been through and maybe, why they're the way they are. And assuming is just not going to help.
Absolutely. And, and in every interaction that we have as a teacher or as a student service provider, your interactions reflect a lot of you as well. So sometimes you have a bad interaction and you think, oh, that student it's rude, or it's because, what about you? Why am I feeling this way? Just you got to also take responsibility, right? And accountability on behavior for your own unconscious biases, because we all have biases. We also need to understand them.
Yeah.
Like, why do we have they have a tendency to be nicer to this particular country, because it's easier for me. Okay, so maybe I should, go back in and analyze and reflect on my own bias.
Yes. And that's probably the hardest thing because no one wants to be looking at their own biases or looking at inside themselves, do they?
No, we don't. But if you don't, we just, we don't grow. And then we just blame the other person. We just blame people. And it's not helpful.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes. So trying to look more deep within yourself.
Yeah, because I remember one of my first workshops, they asked me, not at Kaplan and another college, they asked me to do this workshop on how to deal with students' mental health. And no one was really expecting that, but I didn't do that. I said, well, before we deal with students' mental health, we have to deal with your own mental health.
Yeah.
And they were like, I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to do this.
But at the end of the day, it's like, how can you expect students to be open and understanding and receptive to that information if you are not open and receptive to that information, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
It's a bit contradicting.
Yeah. And let's say if I don't understand and accept my own challenges, my own biases, if I have someone in front of me who are experiencing distress, I won't have space for it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have space in myself for my own distress. First of all, I didn't even recognize that there's a student in distress. I might label it as he's rude and not understanding that, oh, there is a human in front of me who is going through something, because I'm not able to look at my own distress. So I think I always invite people to, okay, before we talk about students, let's just have a look and reflect about our own mental health. And how do we talk about that? Just by saying that, what happens?
Yeah. I think as well, if we go back to what you said earlier about how unless you've been in the shoes of an international student, you really won't understand. And I think that's also something really important to think about in any case. I mean, not even just in mental health professionals, I think just everyday people. That's why I think people have to have a bit more compassion for those who have moved to Australia, whether it was for work, whether it's as a student, whether they're on a working holiday visa. I think there needs to be more compassion, because those who have never left Australia, or they've maybe never gone overseas, or maybe they've gone to Bali, which is mini Australia, they're not going to understand or know the kind of struggles that people face, or that you face when you move to a new country. It's hard, it's isolating, it's scary, it's overwhelming. So I think I wish everyone could kind of, see it from that perspective. But I mean, obviously not everyone does. I think for the most part, people are pretty understanding, but you do get those people that have probably never left the country and that are quick to sort of pass judgments.
Yes. You always find. That's why I always say to students, whether they are my clients or not, I always say to them, be proud of who you are, and be proud, don't be, I know it's beautiful, and that's one part of the work you do, and it's very valuable. You want to have a good accent in English. You want to, to speak English perfectly, but The reason why you have an accent is because you speak another language. Be
Yeah.
proud of that, right?
Yeah.
And embrace your culture. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. Don't put yourself
Yeah.
down because you don't come from an English speaking country. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I always say that they have to bring,
Yeah.
they need to feel more empowered, because I also
Yeah.
think that there is power. It's completely unconscious and is implicit, but I know that there is. If you speak English, if you're a native speaker, you have more power
Yeah.
in that conversation,
Yes.
right?
Especially if it's countries that were previously a British colony or previously colonized. There is that assumption. I see here in India all the time that English is seen as, you know, if you speak English, that you're automatically better than someone who doesn't speak English. I actually
Yes.
have another Instagram about my life in India, and I posted this joke reel once about how I'm trying to learn Hindi, but locals speak to me in English. And then I had someone reply that said, it's because Indians are educated. And I said, knowing English doesn't mean you're educated.
Exactly.
Just because someone doesn't speak English doesn't mean they're not educated. Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely see it a lot here. I think there was one like politician that I think he spoke broken English in Parliament, and, you know, then everyone was mocking him. And it's just so saddening because that's obviously an after effect of colonization, because if colonization didn't happen, that wouldn't be an issue. Yeah. So there is that huge assumption. Yeah.
There is. And there's a lot of research, and I read once that they did this experiment where they took 3 or 4 experts and they were talking about something in their field that they were really experts in, and it wasn't in English. But then when one person wasn't an expert, was talking in English, they had to vote to decide who the expert was. They voted for the English speaker.
Of course. Okay. Yeah, there you go.
And it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's so sad to see, actually. That's one of the really big kind of downfalls, I think, of social media, is because you see it so much now. Like in the comment sections of posts, you see, I don't know, I just see it all the time. And it's really disheartening because I don't want people just to assume that, oh, like I'm better because I speak English. No, like okay, so here I definitely get treated differently because I'm white, because I'm a white English speaker. Maybe I'm getting treated differently a little bit because I'm a female, but I'm still treated differently because I'm white and an English speaker. Yeah. Which is the reason why I don't try and speak English straight away. Like I will struggle to the depths in Hindi before I try and speak English, to the point where people would say to me, I can speak English. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try.
Yeah,
because it's not appropriate for me to try and expect people to speak English, for one, because I am a guest in this country. I think it's better for me to be trying to learn the local language than to just assume everyone speaks English and to make people speak English to me.
Exactly. That's like, that's really nice of you.
Yeah. My husband's parents don't speak English, so that's another reason why I'm learning Hindi. But yeah, before that, I really struggled when I didn't know the language. That's what made it even more isolating. And my Hindi is like not that great. I'm probably B1 level, but it's enough to be able to communicate enough outside and to try and explain basic things and things like that. But yeah, I just don't think it's fair or right of me. So when people do try and speak English to me, I reply in Hindi.
That's so nice.
I don't know. I just wish sometimes that people would show that kind of same compassion to the visitors in Australia, the international guests, students, workers, things like that. But hopefully one day.
Yeah, I think if someone has experienced living, as you said, living abroad, I think they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? They do. So, for example, my partner, he's Australian, and he traveled and he was very sensitive, but I think he's become more sensitive since he met me. So now he's really aware. So when we meet someone, like, you know, a restaurant, for example, there's a waiter, he goes like, is it Brazilian? And then when they come and he speaks a little bit of Portuguese just to be nice.
Oh, bless.
just like obrigado, just be nice. Whereas before he wouldn't even attempt that because it wasn't
Yeah.
part of it wasn't his radar. And now he is because he
Yeah.
knows me. And then my
Yeah.
kids Portuguese.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's so nice of him. Yeah.
yeah.
I've had students in the past who, they've gone and worked in like these remote cattle farms in the middle of Queensland, and where, they don't, these blokes probably speak the most broadest of Aussie accents, but they have helped my students in learning English by reading to them, and they're patient with them. And it's just something I just wouldn't expect from that,
No.
from people in that industry. But then I think maybe those people who work around international students a lot, like farmers, the working holiday visas, the regional work requirements, I think those people are a bit more open and understanding. And yeah, I had this one student and she learnt to speak English from this like old Aussie farmer who would read to her. That makes me so happy to hear, because I hear a lot of horror stories of like people being not very nice to international people, to students, yes, or whatever. So I was really happy to hear that kind of feedback.
That's beautiful. That is really nice.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Oh, I'm glad.
So how can international students find reliable mental health resources and support while studying abroad?
Okay. So unfortunately, well, I won't start with unfortunately. I just think, well, it is unfortunately, I'm sorry, I have to say that. Unfortunately, mental health in Australia, even though like we talk about the stigma is getting better, there isn't a free mental health service. There isn't. So if a student, it is like studying in a college or university, they will have free access. But it's just how, they have to rely on the service to advertise the service and make it accessible. As I said, universities, I usually tell my students, just really get in touch with your community, because they will be able to find you, right? The right person. So for the Brazilian community, for example, all students, most Brazilian students from Kaplan, nationwide, they come to me because so they want to see me. And I have a private practice, and I do try to help my community. I offer discounts, I offer packages. I have a couple of pro bonos for Brazilians, and I'm sure that every community will do the same. We have the helplines Beyond Blue, Lifeline. Lifeline, they do have interpreters, which is great. But the other services, I'm not sure whether they have it or not. But it's also very important. If you are a student, if you are struggling, speak to someone, speak to a friend, speak to your college, speak to your agent. Agents, they might have access to some services.
Yeah, I really like the idea of reaching out to the community, because there'll be someone who knows an uncle of someone,
Always. And I see like even like my students from Nepal, and I always say to them, oh, I need to see a GP. I say, okay, let's find a Nepalese GP for you. It's better, if you're because they will understand. So try to reach out to your community. And if that's not possible, then you can, go to a local GP, and I'm sure they will find out. If you have a mental, health, an overseas health cover, depending on your cover, it will cover some psychology, but not all covers. You have to really see your individual cover.
So, for example, Medicare card holders, you can go and get your mental health 10-session plan from the GP, your mental health care plan, or, 7+3 or whatever it is. Do they have that option for international students, or does it depend on their individual cover?
It depends on their individual cover.
Right. Okay. Okay. Oh, that sucks. Yeah.
And, no one tells you that, because when you're going to sign up for, it's very different, because like for Australians, we pay monthly for our healthcare, right? But as an international student, so let's say you have a 2-year visa, you have to pay That cover for the entire,
Okay.
yes, a student was telling me that she had to pay like $12,000 for the
Her
health care,
2-year insurance.
something like that.
Wow.
Mm.
And can
So
you
they want,
change your insurance after you pay for it? Like, can you like upgrade or downgrade or anything like that?
I think so. I think you can.
Yeah, okay.
So it's very, that's why I say, education. It's very important. Educate yourself.
Yeah.
Understand what's in that cover. It
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
and I'm sure most colleges and universities, we do offer sessions with some providers, so the providers can actually tell students what's in the cover, what to do if they
Okay.
get sick, and how to claim, and all
Right.
of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I had
Yes.
no idea. $12,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's what I heard last time. I was shocked. I was like, oh my goodness. And just for the insurance,
Yeah.
you
That's
have
not
all the-
including like your, your school fees or your visa fees, everything else. That's a lot of money. Yeah.
the visa now, before July 1st, I think it was $700, and now it's
Yeah.
gone to $1,500.
I saw that
Just
the other
for
day, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, that's crazy. That's a crazy jump.
Australia's become one of the least affordable countries.
I
for
bet it
students.
has. Yeah.
It's down the bottom now. It used to be up high with Canada, and now
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not making it easy, are they? They're definitely making it hard. And this is another thing, if we go back to what we were saying before about people who like complain about people not speaking English or speaking English like not very well, those kind of people.
Yes.
They don't realize how much people have to struggle to get to Australia. Like they're like, foreigners are invading. And it's like, do you know how hard it is to actually bloody get there? It's so difficult. There is so much money involved. There are so many documents involved. There are so many processes. People just have no idea. They just like to sit back and complain.
Exactly. And how much money they bring into our economy.
Exactly. Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's so much.
Crazy.
And they do the work. I'm telling you, like I work from home most days, and I live in a really nice suburb in Sydney. And there's so much like construction, this very luxurious apartment. I'm not kidding. All I hear is Portuguese, Spanish, and a little bit of Arabic. They are the construction workers. They are your students.
Yeah.
They are working. They are building. Because Australia
in between schooling.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I know. It makes me so mad when people are like, "Oh, foreigners are taking our jobs," and it's like, but what are you doing to try and get a job? Are you just putting in like, going and handing your resume to 10 different places just so you can show Centrelink you've applied? Like, what are you actually doing? Are you going to be the ones to go and pick blueberries? Are you going to be the ones working in construction sites? Like, you can't be picky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, you're so right.
Yeah. It's so infuriating.
Yeah, but that's our job. I think we have to be advocates, and we need to educate the population. So I'm educating my family and, understanding, and my kids know they're sensitive about it.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. We just have to do our job.
Yeah, definitely. Can you suggest some self-care practices that are particularly beneficial? I say international students, but really for anyone, maybe any international people, some self-care practices if they're struggling with their mental health.
Yeah. Look, I would say something that I'll suggest to anyone really, connection. It's very important to connect with people that you love, and it doesn't need to be in person, right? So call a friend, call a parent, someone that you love in a very regular basis, have that connection. It's really important. Just the foundations of good sleep, good diet, some mindfulness, meditation, physical exercise is really important. Even I say to students, you don't have the time, just go for a quick walk, just be outside, sit in nature. It's so important. Get off these devices because it's addictive, and it excites your brain so much. And then they all complain, like most students, they say they struggle to sleep. It's something that it's a common issue, but they glued to this device, right? Because I understand It's how they communicate to family. That's how they look for jobs. That's how they talk to people. I get that. But it's very important to be present and
Yeah.
just, have some detox once a week, twice a week. Don't. Another thing that I like to say, and is a tip that I give to everyone, try to be mindful in what you're doing. So, for example, it's so common you see on a bus, on a train, commuting, people are listening to their music, they're scrolling on the phone, don't. So if you are commuting, try to just commute. Very hard. But just look around. See the people next to you. Smile to the person sitting next to you. Try to absorb what's happening. Right? Just be intentional. That actually can change the tone of your day. Right? So 30 minutes, go outside, get some sunshine, sit on the grass, talk to someone rather than just being, glued on the technology. And I know it's really hard, especially for young people, because that's how they know. That's what life is about, right?
Yeah, that's all they've ever known, really, isn't it?
Exactly. It is. As I was saying, I only had a phone when I was 22, 23. So I grew up without it. And I can imagine it's just part of their identity, this technology. But it's just not, it's not good. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
And it brings in a lot of, comparison, a lot of distraction, these comments, and a lot of trolling. And if you're already feeling anxious, if you're already not feeling great about yourself, the worst place you want to be is on TikTok and on Instagram.
Yeah, true, 100%. Yeah.
I think you need to have real conversations. You need to, to have a makeup-free, filter-free life. So, it's not very popular because they're young. They don't like that advice.
I remember reading something a little while ago that was like, if you don't have time to say, meditate for X number of minutes or do yoga or do any of those kind of activities, at least take 5 minutes of your day to be intentional. Like you were saying, commuting, like for example, if you have a coffee, notice the smells, the flavor, the temperature, and, that takes 5 minutes. Doing those sorts of activities to to be in that moment and kind of be intentional in those different activities you're doing, taking time to slow down. So I think that was really great advice that I read.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not a fan of multitasking. I don't believe in multitasking. I think we just have to be intentional and present in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, and it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't need to be 20 minutes. It can be a minute. It could be 30 seconds.
Yes. Yeah, true. Start off with what you're capable of doing, what you're actually able to do. That's something that I tell my students for learning a language, which I should be doing myself, is, whatever you can commit yourself to, do that. Don't tell yourself, I'm going to study an hour every day, 5 days a week. It's not going to happen. If right now all you can do is like 3 times a week for 10 minutes, do 3 times a week for 10 minutes. So try and find something that is achievable for you. You can always build up on that. And I think it's the same with mindfulness, is that if you can only do, 1 minute of breathing when you first wake up, that kind of breathing exercises, do that. You can start off, but do something that is achievable for you. Don't set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just check in with you during the day. Just remember to breathe. Sometimes we're not even breathing. We just, oh, okay, I just gotta breathe. Just take a deep breath.
True. Yeah.
That's self-care. That's good. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when people don't really understand what self-care is, they automatically assume that it is yoga, that it is meditating for 30 minutes a day or, that kind of stuff. But there's so much more. There's so much more of what, like, self-care involves so much more, like there's so many different things that you can do for self-care.
Absolutely. And, there's also that idea of, self-care is like a bubble bath or a very indulgent massage.
Getting your nails done.
Yeah, it's great. But I think the best self-care, it's not something that is actually comfortable, because the best self-care are the things that you don't want to do. but you need
Yeah,
to
true.
do in order for you to feel good, right?
Yeah.
It's putting yourself through discomfort, is saying no
Mhm.
when you want to say yes, or really saying no when you need to say no, but you find it very hard, is to say no to that McDonald's. It is really putting yourself first. That's
Mhm.
hard, but that's self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Alrighty, Fernanda, before we finish up today, how can people contact you for more information if they want to? What's the best
All
way to
right.
reach out to you?
Yes, so they can contact me, even though I'm not present on Instagram anymore, but I do have an Instagram account. It's Fernanda Magda.
Mhm.
The same with
Mhm.
LinkedIn and my website, fernandamagda.com.au. I do have a private practice where I see international students, immigrants, and
Mhm.
people from all around the world. And
Yep.
yeah, I don't have a TikTok account yet, maybe in the future.
No worries. I'll put all of that in the episode description anyway. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really, really great to chat
It's
to
been
you and to talk
great.
all things
Thank you
mental
so
health.
much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right.